Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Sporty's latest webinar. We're thrilled to have you with us this afternoon for a special presentation with our friends from ForeFlight. This is always one of our most popular webinars every year, and this one should be good. We're talking about 10 ForeFlight features you might not know about. So digging deep for those who either are new to the app and trying to learn all the latest gimmicks and tricks, or for the power users who want to learn about a feature they may not know about. Now, on to our presenters. We are really lucky to have with us today two great presenters, two people who know ForeFlight absolutely inside and out, two of the real pros that I can get answers from. I know Josh Berman, he's a private pilot, instrument rated. He's been with ForeFlight a long time, 11 years. If you know ForeFlight history, you know that's most of the life of the company. And he's a manager on the pilot support team, so really handles all parts of the app, knows the features inside and out. And then Brandon Walker, he's a commercial pilot, single and multi. He's instrument rated, been with ForeFlight 5 years, and is in charge of the business and military aviation testing with ForeFlight. So both active pilots, both know the software side of it, and I'm really excited myself to learn from them. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon and take it away.
All right, thanks, John. We'll just go ahead and dive right in and talk about the first feature, and that's VFR altitude setting it as a default. So ForeFlight Mobile has the ability to set a default altitude on an aircraft, and if that aircraft's default altitude is a VFR altitude, then all new flights will be created as VFR. All right, so we'll dive in and do a demo on setting it up. So if we go and get over to the aircraft tab, and once we're presented with our list of aircraft here, my particular account has hundreds of aircraft, so I use the search function a lot. So I'll go ahead and search for a particular 182 I want to tinker about with today. All right, so I've searched for that aircraft. I've got my aircraft selected. Once I've got my aircraft presented, I'll scroll down to the bottom of that flight plan, sorry, that aircraft form. And at the bottom, you'll see an option to make that aircraft your default. So once that's selected, every new flight you generate in ForeFlight Mobile will be generated with that aircraft. All right, so in this particular aircraft, I want to also set my default cruise altitude. So we'll scroll up a bit and find that option here and set our default cruise altitude to a suitable VFR altitude for your area. Here in the Houston area, 3,500 is good because it's just all flat. So once I've got that set, my aircraft's happy, we can now navigate over to the flights tab, generate a new flight, and that new flight will be VFR, and that's noted by on the left, you've got your list of flight plans. You see the VFR tag there. On the right side, in the flight plan form, you'll see the flight rules of VFR, and my cruising altitude that I selected is also there. Just one small thing to streamline your flight planning and make your life a little bit easier.
Yeah, Brandon, I can really see that saving some time. There are certain aircraft I fly where I know I'm not going to be flying it as a IFR flight plan, and to go in and set that aircraft's default altitude at one of the VFR altitudes is that's a big time saver.
Exactly, and each aircraft is different, depending on the equipment you're flying. So if you're flying, 152 around the town, and you also have access to turbocharged Bonanza, those are going to have, vastly different, default cruising altitudes. So that's one cool feature to have. So next, we'll go into talking about the setting search. I tend to use the search or filter features here a lot in ForeFlight, and settings has that ability there. So we'll navigate over to settings via the more tab and tap that settings button at the top right corner. And we'll be presented with the settings modal. And here you'll have the ability to filter out any setting you want. All right, in ForeFlight. So today we'll talk about, we'll filter out our own ship. We just released the option to change your own ship color. So we'll go ahead and tease that a bit here. So if we drill down into that, you'll see at the top there, you've got the ability to set your own ship shape and color. So that's one of the cool features that we have that we've just recently released.
Yeah, it's always neat to see what aircraft other pilots select as their favorite. There's a lot of people that just go with the default, and then some people like to scroll deep into the list, grab the DC-3 or maybe one of the military aircraft in there. It's kind of a neat way to customize how ForeFlight looks for you.
Exactly. I'm more of a B2 guy myself.
Nice.
If I could dream.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, Josh. So I'll hand it over to you, and we'll talk about the cool features on the Maps tab dealing with map touch action.
Thanks, Brendan. So if you're flying, excuse me, with the VFR chart selected, ForeFlight, as part of your normal subscription, we stitch together the charts to be seamless and contiguous across the country. So as you zoom in or out or pan around, it doesn't matter. You've always got a smooth view. And you know, to date how long I've been flying, there were many a day that I had a cockpit full of poorly folded sectionals and was flipping them over and scrambling trying to find it. And we have it so good these days with EFBs having all of this data literally at our fingertips. The only thing we can't do with these is wrap Christmas presents quite as easily. So that's the downside. But anyway, because we stitch those together, we have to make choices about which chart is going to be the one that displays in areas where multiple charts overlap. And so to give you, the pilot, the ability to kind of see what else is there, we have a setting that you can access under the Maps settings button, the gear button up at the top there. So when you tap that setting and go down to map touch action, you can pick between no action, which is where you just have the seamless view of charts, or one of two options that will bring the chart to the front. And if you select either of those, when you then single tap on the map, it will cycle through whichever charts overlap at that area. So in this example, we've got the TAC, the terminal area chart in the Phoenix area. And as you single tap on it, it changes between the TAC and the sectional. If there's an area where there are more charts overlapped, then you know it would take more taps to cycle through, but it lets you see everything that is out there chart-wise in a particular area. This also applies to some international charts and also the VFR charts from other countries, and also to FAA IFR charts. And in this example, we've got the big north-south oriented IFR chart on the East Coast around Florida. And if you single tap in kind of the lower section towards Orlando, then it will bring up the other more east-west oriented IFR chart. And with any of these, when you've tapped on it, you can then zoom in and see the detail that's printed in the chart margin if you selected the one that was bring to the front with legends. So the next thing I wanted to touch on was the weight and balance in flights. And it's been over a year now since we introduced the enhanced weight and balance. And that the big change with that is it associates the weight and balance feature with a specific aircraft in your more aircraft tab. So when you have that feature turned on, you'll be setting up the weight and balance profile on the aircraft's page. With performance plans, the really useful piece of the weight and balance then is that you can build a weight and balance or run a weight and balance analysis for the specific flight that you're on. So once you've created the flight, you scroll down a little bit and then tap on the green weight and balance button. And that will then bring up a full screen view of the weight and balance profile. If you've got just one profile for the aircraft, it'll show it to you here. If you've got multiple ones, it'll give you a pop-up where you can select which profile. But from this page, you can add the people and the cargo, whatever load you're going to be taking on the flight. Now, since you're building this weight and balance from the flight, based on the performance profile that you had selected and the route that you've got entered, the fuel is initially set up on the weight and balance there. But you can make changes to the fuel either on the flight page here or in the weight and balance profile itself there, and it automatically transfers back to the other place. So it always stays in sync. I find this really, really useful as I'm doing some what if planning, trying to figure out, can I make the trip with the people that I want to take or with the amount of cargo that I want to take? It's really nice to have that information just automatically tie directly to the flight. You can still do a standalone weight and balance analysis if you want to from the more weight and balance page, but for me, I seldom touch that anymore because my calculations are really specific to the flight. This is the screen that you see when you tap the summary button, and it shows you the summary of the weight and balance that you've calculated. You can export that to iOS's files, you can print it, and then with performance plans, you can also save that weight and balance profile right to the files that are associated with that flight. So if you need to document that you ran the analysis, you can do that and save it with the flight's files. So Brandon, I think we'll throw back to you to take a look at some profile view.
Yeah, definitely awesome. And I can say that weight and balance, enhanced weight and balance has been a game changer, especially for me, and being able to update and get calculations and change fuel values and payload values and have that reflected in the flight. It's been awesome to see that and streamline the
I didn't mention it before, but for anybody who doesn't have the enhanced weight and balance turned on, you can do that in the more accounts ForeFlight Labs menu, and you can toggle it on or off. And there's a little bit of work the first time you change it over. You have to make sure that the previous profile that you had is successfully migrated over. We've got some guides online on how to do that, or you can certainly reach out to team@foreflight.com for help if you're giving that a try for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, so we'll take it on over to the profile view on the Maps tab. ForeFlight Mobile encompasses this profile view. It provides so much data and information for your route. And one of the cool features that we have here is the ability to adjust altitudes for a specific waypoint on that route. So when we view that route and our waypoints are presented at the bottom in those labels, if we tap on that route, so on that waypoint label, say for now, sort of VOR, we're presented with an altitude, speed, and time box. And this allows us to set a crossing at or starting at altitude for that particular waypoint. And once that's done, the profile view will actually draw that descent on the profile view for us. And one other feature that's presented in that profile view is the ability to change and set your default altitude. So if you were to tap the altitude, say 4,000 there on the left, it brings up the altitude advisor, and that allows you to view and set all of the, you can view your altitude advisor, which shows you all of the winds aloft, your estimated time en route, and fuel burn for that. So we'll go ahead and change that altitude to say 3,500, for instance. And once that's set, you'll notice your initial altitude has been changed. and the rest of your route is set as we set initially.
Brandon, when we were brainstorming ideas to talk about in this webinar and you showed us this, it was a light bulb scenario. I have been using ForeFlight for a long time, and I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I did not know that you could tap on that altitude. I had always been using the slider, and the slider is really cool because it responds dynamically, but for a quick altitude change to just be able to tap that, man, I am very grateful to have learned that here. I'm going to use that a lot.
Definitely. Yeah, and then having that altitude advisor is kind of game changing in this particular view as well. And yeah, so I'll hand it back over to you, Josh, to talk about some runway selection items and runway wins via ADS-B.
Sure. So when you're in flight, one of the things that ForeFlight now offers is a pop-up alert that with the destination ATIS frequency. So obviously you have to have an airport in the route where you're going, but as you're approaching that airport, you'll get the little pop-up, and it's a good reminder to me, hey, if you haven't checked what the destination weather is, now is a good time to do that. But if you're using an XM receiver or an ADS-B receiver that gives you in-flight weather, you can also get information about the destination airport even before you can reliably receive the ATIS frequency. So in this case, if you tap on the airport, it will show you the little side menu there. And then in terms of selecting which runway you're going to go to, that's often one of the questions I have as I'm nearing the destination. You know, if I can't hear the ATIS, well, what direction is everybody landing? So you can get a good idea on that by tapping the runway selection there. And this does two things that I really appreciate. It shows you all of the runways at that airport. And then if you've got that in-flight weather receiver, it's taking the winds from the most recent METAR and it's applying them to those runways to show you the crosswind and either the headwind or tailwind component. And this is a really nice way to start getting a mental picture of what am I going to be doing as I'm flying into the airport. Now, granted, if you're flying IFR, a lot of that will be kind of done for you, but it's still nice to have a sense for, you know what, probably going to be landing on runway 24. And once you have made that determination that that's likely the runway you're going to be landing on, the next thing I like to do is actually highlight that runway. And you do that by tapping on the runway number and then saying select the runway. When you do that, it adds a blue line and the little arrows on it to show you that's the runway that you've designated. And then you can also see up at the top in the flight plan drawer that it has selected runway 24. As you continue to approach the airport, especially if you're doing it VFR, I think a really useful thing to do is to add your traffic pattern. Not that you're necessarily going to have the airplane's autopilot fly it if you've got a connected panel, but just as a reminder of which way you're going to be turning and which runway are you going to be lining up for. So to do that, you can tap the procedure button and then choose traffic patterns into the destination. And if you look at the map on the right, you see the runway that we had previously selected is still highlighted blue. On this page, it does show you what the most recent winds are. It doesn't show you the headwind or tailwind component for each runway, but since we've already determined that before, we know we're still good with runway 24. So once you select the once you select the runway there, then it will give you the options for which traffic pattern you're going to fly into that runway. And here you can see the left traffic shows as the default, and the doing a 45 entry is kind of the best side. So you pick the one that you want and then say add to route, and then that will add it to the route that you see when you go back to the maps page. Another thing that I like to kind of I don't want to say I modify, let's say. I modify while in flight is the setting that I have for distance rings. Uh, Sometimes I'll be flying and I want to have a distance showing, but other times I'm more interested in, well, how much time until I get to a particular location. So you can change the distance rings settings in the map settings button, the gear button at the top of the page there. But you can also change it quickly by just tapping on the black box there that has the value in it. So in this case, if you tap on the 10 nautical mile box, it immediately pops up the distance ring style button. And there you see we've got two different automatic options based on distance and one automatic option based on time. So with an automatic option, it scales as you zoom in and out so that the rings are always visible on the screen. With one of the fixed settings, it doesn't scale, but so it doesn't scale so that when you zoom in and out, you may zoom yourself right off this page with the distance rings. But different phases of flight call for different things. Sometimes I like having a real immediate sense of how much time it's going to take to get somewhere, and it's really easy to swap it over to the time-based. And then in other cases, I prefer having the distance-based ring, so you can just swap it back and forth like that. So Brandon, speaking of in-flight, there's a feature you and I were talking about related to finding some other traffic.
Yeah, I was surprised when you showed me how you implement this feature in your workflow. But let's pretend you've got some traffic nearby, you're in flight, and you've received a call from, or you've heard a call from approach or center about a ride report or something from a different aircraft, and you're curious to the location of that aircraft. So ForeFlight allows you to search for call sign nearby. So this is whether you've got internet traffic or ADS-B traffic in flight. So if you tap on the search box and enter the tail number or call sign for that aircraft, ForeFlight will pull that up. And if you tap on that, it'll bring you to the maps view with that aircraft highlighted. And then you'll have an idea of exactly where that aircraft is in relative location to yours. And it increases situational awareness tremendously. And another cool feature. I like to just use this on the ground while listening to ATC and find aircraft that are in communication, or just look at aircraft that are flying above me as well. So one of the neat little tidbits that are hidden inside of traffic.
Yeah, I really like the fact that it gives search results, even if you don't hear the whole call sign. I mean, granted, you'd need more than like just the 5, but if you hear, just 138, well, you can type that in, and if the app has received traffic data from a target that includes that in its identifier, it'll show in the list, and you can tap it and select it.
Yeah, definitely mind-blowing. Yeah, so with that, we'll migrate over to some binder features. So ForeFlight has the ability to implement binders and allow you to bind your plates and charts into one organized view there. So if you were to navigate to plates and tap on the Add Flight Binder button, ForeFlight gives you some options to pull a flight from the maps or flights. And if you've got approaches or departure procedures, arrival procedures associated with your route, ForeFlight will automatically pull those, pull the plates associated with that into your flight binder. And one cool feature when you're viewing those plates, say you're in flight or you're on the ground looking at a taxi diagram, once you're done, you're ready to depart, you need to pull up your departure diagram. So your departure procedure, you can take 3 fingers, swipe to the left, and that'll bring up the next plate in your binder. And doing so subsequently will cycle through all of the plates in your binder. So one way to stay organized and help you stay ahead of the airplane by having all the information there ready and available to you.
Yeah. In the rare instance where you've got a 2-page plate, the single finger would swipe between it, but between the different pages of the plate. But doing the 3-finger swipe to quickly change between them, that's I use that very often if I'm looking at a specific plate on an airport and just want to jump to the other one. It's quicker to just swipe versus closing it or going back to the menu.
Yeah, definitely.
So last one we wanted to talk about was the daily hourly forecast shortcut. A while ago, we introduced the daily and hourly forecast into the app, and this is an aviation themed forecast that you can get for any airport in the world and also any location. And we'll show that a little bit more in this demo, but it brings up an hourly forecast with aviation specific details, flight category, ceiling visibility, and so forth. And if you just want to forecast even for the lake that you're at, you can zoom in on the map, touch hold on the lake, and tap the WX button, and that will bring up the daily forecast for it. The other thing you can do if you've got ForeFlight on an iPhone with you and you're out and about and want to get the forecast for wherever you happen to be at that moment is touch hold on the ForeFlight icon. That'll bring up a little pop-up and you choose local forecast, and then it will use the position from the iPhone to generate or to download the forecast for that exact location. I use this a lot just in every day walking around, and I found myself using it even more a few days ago when the Apple Forecast app wasn't working very well. I could pull this up, and my family wasn't quite as interested in the fact that, oh, it's going to be VFR, but at least this gave me a good sense of what the temperature was going to be like and things that did matter to them. So, it's one more piece of really useful information that you could get out of ForeFlight. We've had some people ask, well, how accurate is it? It is a computer-generated forecast. There is not a meteorologist who is looking at this and adjusting the settings at all, but it is a consistent computer-generated forecast. So the way I personally use it is if I'm trying to plan, well, am I going to go for a flight, let's say on Monday, I'll start looking at the daily forecast now and look at, what does it look like the day before and what does it look like the day after? And I will keep checking that in addition to some of the aircraft or aviation specific forecasts. And that really helps me get a much better feel for what is the weather going to be like on that particular day. Now, within 24 hours or within 12 hours, okay, at that point, I'm not really saying, okay, well, this says it's going to be 94 degrees, so I know it's going to be 94 degrees. It's not quite that level of precise necessarily, but I'm confident it'll be hot versus 60 degrees. It's not going to send you wrong like that. So really a super useful thing, especially the fact that it can work for really anywhere on the globe. So it doesn't matter where you're traveling. If you can get access to the internet so it can download the data, you'll be able to get that forecast. So John, I think that's pretty much everything we had in mind to talk about, but we've got some time here so we can throw it open to some Q&A.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for the tips, guys. I love that last one, that hourly forecast I use all the time. I learned a couple there myself. Josh, I'm with you on the altitude thing. I've been using ForeFlight from the beginning, and I didn't know that. So
yeah,
thanks for that one.
You can teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess along those lines, while we're getting the questions fired up here, a reminder, if you would like to submit a question, please feel free to do that. Some great resources online here or on the screen here if we don't get to your question. Sporties, we do a free website called iPad Pilot News, packed with tips and tricks, videos, lots of good information there about being a more skillful user of your iPad and ForeFlight. ForeFlight also has a fantastic support area with videos, Q&A, FAQs, so foreflight.com support worth checking out. You can definitely sign up for more webinars like this. We've got a bunch coming up at Sporties at sporties.com/webinars. ForeFlight also has a number of them. And then a plug for the pilot support team at ForeFlight. They really are great. If you've ever interacted with them, you know that. They're quick, they're responsive, they're knowledgeable. Team at foreflight.com. But we do, Josh and Brandon, a lot of great questions came in. I'll try to get to some of the highlights here. Definitely the weight and balance got some folks' attention, so we've got a question or two on that. And here's a question asking, I love weight and balance, but every time I fill out, it loads, it defaults to the same weights. Is there any way I can change the defaults in my weight and balance?
So what you can do is save a weight that you use commonly. So if you are typically the pilot and you enter your weight, if you also at that time enter a name for that weight, then that will go into your favorites list and you can then quickly pull that back in. There, um, you could, if it was only ever you flying the plane, you could add yourself in the basic operating weight of the plane, but that's getting a little bit kind of deep in the weeds on the details of the weight and balance feature. But that would let you set common weights that you use, and it makes it a little quicker to load those into the various different stations.
And how about a couple of people asked a similar question here about weight and balance of rearranging. So I know I'm taking me and two friends, and I know I've got some bags. Is there a way to quickly kind of move that around, that I'm moving Bill to the back seat and George to the front seat and vice versa? Is there any shortcut there or any tips you could offer?
I think,
So,
well, go ahead, Brandon.
okay. So currently, ForeFlight allows you to use saved loads. So as long as you enter a description of that load, so in a description, in this case would be our friend's name. Doing that will allow you to just select a load and then select whoever sits in that load. And then you could clear out, as needed. But as far as like drag and drop, that's not implemented just yet, but it's definitely something that we'd like to improve on.
Great. A question, I think I know the answer here, but again, I'm always learning something, so I thought I'd throw this out to you all about, let me get to it here. How do you enter an approach, or can you enter an approach in an intermediate destination? So I'm flying from here to there, but in between, I want to shoot an approach at an airport along the way. Can I load that in to the flight plan area there?
Yeah, right now you cannot. ForeFlight only puts the approach at the final airport in your route. So what you'd need to do is uh, eliminate any subsequent airports in your route and just have the intermediate one, and then you can load the approach there. Um, I mean, you could get really detailed and pull up the plate beforehand for that airport and then drag the route to the individual points of the approach, but that's a very manual and slightly time-consuming process. So I think for most folks, I would recommend just having the intermediate airport as your destination, and then use the procedure advisor to pick the approach and then add it in that way.
Great. Josh, I think you blew some people's mind with the map touch action. That's one I see also a lot of people don't know about. I don't know if you guys have a live iPad you could pull up to maybe show that, just kind of that whole process again, start to finish. Some questions about, if I look at, the side of a sectional, maybe I'm looking for MOA information, how do I make it appear? Then how do I make it go away? So maybe you could walk through that process.
Sure. So we've got the sectional pulled up here, and if you tap the map settings button there and then scroll down to the map touch action, which is towards the bottom of the list there, then you want to choose the bring chart to front with legends option. That's what's going to show the collars or the edges of the chart. And then you got to hit close. And then what you need to do is tap in a particular area. So in this case, we're sort of centered on central Texas. And if you zoom in over on the left, you'll be able to see the details of what's on the chart there. If you're satisfied you found what you want and you just want it to go away, then the thing to do is go back up into map touch action and turn that back to no action. In that case, it's just defaulting it right back to the seamlessly joined charts that ForeFlight offers. Um, Now, the other thing you can do, Jay, why don't you just show doing a single tap in the area of that chart collar, it'll change you over to the other chart that's in that area. And if you do another tap, it should bring you back and show the other chart there.
That's really useful. And Josh, question, I guess, just for you and your experience, how do you go back and forth between the data-driven aeronautical map layer and sectionals? Is there a time when you like one or the other? I know some of this is personal preference, but maybe talk us through how you use those different layers.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I dove into the aeronautical data layer pretty hard early on because I wanted to see if I could make it work. And for most of my flying, I don't even turn on the sectional chart anymore or the IFR chart. I just go with the aeronautical layer because it gives you so much adjustability of what you're seeing. And, it's always right side up when I'm flying track up headed south. But it's really easy with the map drop down in the upper left-hand corner to toggle whichever chart you want to have on or off at any moment. But for me personally, I do turn the terrain on with the aeronautical layer, and I have it selected as colored and as opposed to the shadowed terrain. So if you go up to the map settings button there, and you see we've got the look here looks pretty much like a sectional, but if you go to terrain and you can toggle between the shaded and the colored. Shaded is just basically black and white. And that still tells you where the high ground is, but I prefer the colored because it looks more like the sectional. And I did learn to fly with the sectional. So that's the piece that I'm comfortable with, and I like that kind of visual cue. But yeah, for me personally, I'm all in on the aeronautical layer. I think it does everything that I need it to do for flying, and I haven't really found a scenario where there wasn't information that I couldn't pull up with just a tap or two versus having to pinch zoom in really far on the map to try and read something on the map. Brandon, how about you? Do you toggle between them, or are you all in on one way or the other?
Yeah, I can go either way, but I did find myself in this transition phase where I had the VFR sectional chart with the aeronautical layer enabled. However, I disabled all of the airways, and airspace, and just left the airports, and that allowed me to still have access to the quick touch options to be able to tap on an airport and quickly get information. And as I transitioned towards being the aeronautical layer only, I slowly added more options, and then the VFR sectional kind of faded out into view. So yeah, mine was a slow transition.
I agree with you guys. I think what a lot of people may not realize at first is all the options in the aeronautical layer to really build your own sectional. You showed some of the options there, Josh, and you've shown some of them now. You can change the shading, you can change the overlays, you can essentially rebuild everything on the sectional, but maybe turn off things that don't matter. Maybe you don't care about center boundaries or you don't care about intersections. So that's a great option to kind of customize it. A couple related questions around this. One is VFR flyway charts, Class B enhanced graphics. I'm in LA and I want to find the transition routes and altitudes. Where's the quick way to find that in ForeFlight?
So Jay, can you pull that back up? There's one way to do it, obviously, is turn on the sectional chart and zoom in and tap over to the TAC and try and get it to show, but that's that doesn't really fit with the quick. So for that, I would say go to Documents, the Documents tab at the bottom, and then FAA. And we've got a folder category there called Visual Chart Supplemental. And if you go in there, we've got basically the information from the back of each terminal area chart that has information. Not every TAC has information on the back, but for those that do, we have extracted that into these different documents. So you can pull it up here and pinch zoom in. It's a document. You can annotate on it if you want to. And really get the information and have it quickly at hand. And Brandon, I think you had another way to do it that I had completely forgotten.
Yeah, so I have this option in my map layers. I've got a USVFR flyway map layer that takes every single flyway chart and just overlays it onto the map. And that way I can look at any large metro area, like say for instance, the Houston area, and bring up the flyway chart for that area.
Yeah, that's a good one. That shows you've got the red arrows there of the transition routes there. It doesn't have the full level of detail that you would get from the border of the tag, but this is still a handy way to see. And as Jay's zooming in there, you can see we've got the visual reporting points that are a recent addition to the app, and kind of nice to have when you're flying in areas where those are important for your navigation.
Related to this, while we're on the maps page, I know we're doing a lot on this, but a lot of good questions here. This is a good tip I like, and had the question come in, is there a way to choose multiple layer options at one time versus one and then another? And I know there is, so I wonder if you could show that.
Oh, multiple layer options.
So I think the getting at is, if I want to turn on radar and traffic and METARs all and just bam, 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 hit it in a row.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so if you navigate to that map settings via the toggle and scroll down to closer to the bottom, there's a layer selector section. And if you check multiple selections, that'll allow you to open the layer selector and select multiple layers while that drawer stays open. And you just tap away if you want to dismiss it.
Yeah, that's a great power user feature, I think. If you want to go from sort of a stripped down clean to put all the different layers on, you can do it really quickly. A question while we have the iPad up about traffic. I think a few people that was news to them. Could you show how that works and how I find internet traffic or search for it and that process?
Sure. So we've got it selected right here. When you're on the ground and your device is connected to the internet, you're getting traffic that is, it's a few seconds delayed. So it's useful for seeing, what's flying over me outside, but it's not something you could use in flight. So the app will actually disable the internet traffic once you take off. But if you're on the ground and you select the traffic layer with the maps drop down, it's the same traffic layer that you would use with an ADS-B receiver. And it will start populating here, and any traffic target you tap on, it'll show you details about it. So we can actually test the search feature here. So UAL 1621. So if you tap away from that target and then you tap in the search and you just type 1621, it should bring that up as a traffic target that's visible. Yeah. So when you tap on it there, then it will slew the display to that target. And that's just how it works when it's in flight. You don't need to know the whole call sign to be able to pull it up. Now on this target, if you tap the center button, it'll stay locked to that target, so you wouldn't be able to pan away from it. And then if you decide you are done tracking that United flight, then you go ahead and re-tap that button, and then it lets you pan around again.
Here's a non-map one, and don't know how much you guys really have you can say on this, but the news recently, ForeFlight bought Cloud Ahoy, a popular debriefing app. Any comments on what users, if somebody's using both of those apps, what they should expect short term?
Short term is no change. We're really excited to have the Cloud Ahoy team on board. They're a great bunch of people with a phenomenal product. We're looking forward to learning from them about how they do what they do, and hopefully bringing some exciting features into ForeFlight in the months to come. But short term and medium term, we don't have any plans to put anything behind a paywall. If you're using Cloud Ahoy with another app, fantastic. Keep doing it. The insights you get from debriefing your flight via Cloud Ahoy are fantastic, and keep doing that. And hopefully down the road, some of the things you see in ForeFlight might entice you to come over and give ForeFlight a try.
Here's a question about adding waypoints, custom waypoints, checkpoints. Some people like to touch on the map. Some people create waypoints in the flight plan field there. Do you have a suggestion or preference, or maybe show how that could work if I'm adding some custom waypoints to my flight?
Brandon, you want to do that?
Oh, sure. So there's a few ways to set up custom waypoints. One of the quickest ways is to just find that particular point on the screen. So we've got if you've got a house that you need to go do some aerial photography over, you can find that place on the map and basically tap and hold on that. And there's an option for that location. So if you see the coordinates, if you tap the more option, you can hit save. And then it gives you the option to set a name for that. And once you set that, you can save that. And now you should be able to use that waypoint in your route. So you can actually tap on that house waypoint and add it to your route, and you can play with it.
And it's fair to say those waypoints will act just like any other waypoint. You can add them as you've done here to your flight plan. You could put multiple in and they show up there, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, really,
yeah, that is
really
correct.
powerful feature if you have regular places you go. I think probably not enough pilots make use of those.
Yeah, you can also rubber band to them as well. If you had a user waypoint nearby, you can grab the route and drag it over, and that will pop up as one of the available options in your list if you had a user waypoint near there.
All right, guys, maybe one more question here. This one gets back to weight and balance. Again, since we've got the live iPad up, that's really helpful, I think, for a lot of people. Could you walk through again the way that weight and balance is integrated there into flights, and how that flow works, and how to make sure you have the enhanced weight and balance turned on?
Sure. So, Jay, do you want to grab that flight there? So in this flight here, it's kind of a direct one, but you can see we've got the green weight and balance. Well, yeah, go ahead and hit a route, just make it a little more interesting there. Amuse, there you go. And so we can't show it on this demo, but for anybody who's watching the webinar, if you go to the More account and then ForeFlight Lab, there you go. I guess we can see that. The setting for the enhanced weight and balance is under ForeFlight Labs, and you can toggle it on or off. Hopefully, once you try it, you'll decide you want to stick with it. If you just can't stand it for some reason, you can deselect it at that point. But it will be transitioning to the enhanced weight and balance at some point this year. So it's a good idea to get your feet wet in it and get comfortable with how it works. So if you've got the enhanced weight and balance already selected, you like if you scroll down here, we've got the minimum fuel required is set. So we've got, I think, 46 gallons are set for this flight. If you go up a little bit and then tap on the weight and balance, that will open up the weight and balance profile for this aircraft. And in this case, we've got one load in it already. If you go ahead and tap on pilot or co-pilot there, and let's put in a weight, let's say, 150, let's say. And then in the description, if you type the name, pick a name, Jay. There we go, Bob. All right, once you've done that, that will go in and it will be in the list of weights that you can add later on once you hit close. So that's in. So if you pull this up, you can see now and scroll down a little bit, Bob is now in the list of saved loads. So if you were trying to swap between people that you typically fly with, you could just tap on the seat and then quickly change between one person or another that you had previously saved. And any changes you make here are going to propagate back, but go scroll down to the fuel section here and let's show what happens if you make the change here. So we had the minimum fuel was 46, but let's say we want to take 60 gallons of fuel in this case. And the graph reflects that automatically up at the top. And then when you go back to the flight itself, go back to Austin to Lubbock, you'll see now the fuel policy automatically switched to manual fuel because we've specified that we want the 60 gallons. And if you change it again, if you say, give me the max fuel that we can take, then when you go back into weight and balance, if you go up to the green weight and balance and tap in balance, then it will show you, okay, now that reflects the change that you just made in the fuel. You know, the nice thing about this is if you keep the flight in your list, you've got a record of what you did with the weight and balance. But if you want the slightly more permanent method, you can tap the summary button, and then that'll bring up the kind of the one-page view of the calculations that were done for that flight.
Great, thanks for that. I think that's a great hidden feature in there. I want to thank both Josh and Brandon. I really appreciate all the tips. That's some really good practical hands-on stuff there. Again, we'll have a recording of this webinar up on Sporty's YouTube channel and sportys.com/webinars soon. So if you missed something or want to watch something again and hit pause and work your iPad alongside it, that will be available. If you have follow-up questions in the days ahead, reach out, team@foreflight.com for a great answer. And thanks again for joining us, everyone. We appreciate you participating in Sporty's webinar series. Our thanks again to ForeFlight for being our guest today, and we hope to see you again soon on another Sporty's webinar in the future.